I'm finding a balance.
You feel like you raised the bar for maybe, like I think brown skin rapper chicks, no disrespect, but I think since you came in the game, it kind of made it hard for them.
Really?
Yeah, I think brown skin chicks got to work a little harder. I think it's like you set a bar for like brown skin chicks to be like, because a lot of chicks at that time was like, oh wow, well, Nicki popping right now, I gotta be at least trying to catch up to look like her somewhat. And a lot of brown skin chicks really, like I think brown skin chicks got to work extra harder.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in to CodeBlaque Facts. You guys know I love you and appreciate you. If you are returning, thank you. Welcome. If you're first time, welcome to you as well. So as you guys have already seen, this is an interview that Nicki Minaj did, and the interview was done with her former manager, BigFindi. Okay, and so I'm going to give you a little bit more background, but before I do that, I wanted to kind of give you guys my thoughts and then play the entire interview not the entire interview, but the entire scene where Nicki Minaj addresses colorism. So a little bit of background. The interview was first posted on Instagram, and that's where I saw it. And when Nicki Minaj made her colorism comments, or what her perspective on colorism, and I looked through some of the comments, of course, there's always thousands and thousands of comments, but I looked through the comments and I saw where, there was somewhat of a divide. You had a lot of men who thought a certain way. You had a lot of women. You had people that, felt like colorism is very prevalent within the Black community. You had people that felt like it's really not, that was kind of old. It's kind of not, it doesn't really exist anymore. So I felt like, this would be a good topic to talk about, because colorism is very prevalent, in my opinion, in the Black community. And I kind of want to give you my perspective and break it down and give you really good examples of why I think so. So if you stay tuned, I'm going to give you my thoughts, my own personal thoughts on colorism. Then I'm going to go over a few things, and then I'll play the entire scene where Nicki Minaj addresses colorism. And then after that, I will come back and give some of my thoughts again. So you guys stay tuned, and we're going to get to the business. Okay, so my own personal thoughts on colorism. I will say this. I am a brown-skinned chick, okay? I'm a brown-skinned woman. There's always a scale, I guess, if you will. And on the brown skin scale, I would be somewhat at the top. Meaning I would be considered like a light brown, if that makes sense. So, yeah. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because I don't want anybody to get it twisted. I'm not trying to, speak on what it feels like to be dark skin, brown skin, or what I'm not. That's not my intention. My intention is to talk about this particular topic because clearly there is a divide, and there's a divide on many sides. Okay. So I want to talk that's my intention. So, with that being said, I personally, came into the, into knowing what colorism was, because colorism is everywhere. I mean, everywhere you look, it's there. Whether it be on TV, where you see, these TV shows casting light skin, racially ambiguous looking women all the time, a majority of the time, beauty standards, where the closer you are to looking like a Caucasian woman, the more beautiful you are. I mean, just, seeing it all over and just kind of understanding what it was. Now, of course, we all know that colorism has roots in slavery, but even before slavery, it was a such thing as colorism. Obviously, they didn't call it that, but it was there. Now, I don't want to go too far back, because I know sometimes when we go far back, we lose people. So I kind of want to keep it current. But you can, right now, today, colorism, in my opinion, it still exists. It is very prevalent. We still see it. If you look closely, you will see it. But you have to understand what you're looking at. You have to understand what you see. And you really have to take the emotion out of it and truly look and see what it is for what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to take that out, because I think sometimes just, in general, if it's not happening to us personally, then we tend to think, oh, well, it's really not that big of a deal, or it's not really going on. And that's just not the case. Something does not have to happen to you personally for it to exist, if that makes sense. So I feel like we need to take ourselves out of it. We need to listen and look at the people around us who, maybe, who do see it, right? And for the record, we already know that we get the whole colorism thing from, non-black people, right? And we know that. Everyone knows that. We call that racism or discrimination. But I'm specifically talking about and addressing colorism within the Black community. And again, I am not trying to come off as this person who is a expert on the title. To be quite honest with you, there are many people who right here on YouTube who their whole channel is built around colorism, and they make really good points, and I follow them. And so I'm not the expert. Basically, I'm just basically using this interview that Nicki Minaj did to point out some very good points. So I hope you guys are open-minded, okay? Because that's what it takes, and can really take the emotion out of it for whatever reason. Take the emotion that may be connected there, take that out, and be logical and just listen to the examples, and let's have a really good dialogue. So that's pretty much where I stand with my own personal thoughts. And so now we're going to move into some other thoughts of mine. Okay, so I would first like to point out the guy doing the interview. His name is BigFindi. He brought up the topic of colorism within the music industry by asking Nicki Minaj the question about, or basically making a statement to Nicki saying that, hey, I think that brown skin women have it harder, like brown skin rappers have it harder. So he brought up the topic. He brought up the topic for a reason. He didn't just pull that out of the air, guys. This is a man who is obviously in the music industry. And for the record, colorism exists everywhere. It's not just in music. It's not just in Hollywood. It's everywhere. But he brought up the topic for a reason. And he brought up the topic because obviously it's something that he see or has seen, right? And so we need to take that into consideration as well. And when he brought it up, Nicki Minaj actually had an opinion about it, and she actually acknowledged it. So to me, just those 2 points right there says that, it is something that's real. It is something that exists, and it wasn't brought up for no reason. Now, I can't speak on why, because again, colorism is a hot topic, and a lot of people sometimes bring up the topic of colorism because right now, people like to follow trends and like to follow tag words and little phrases because, they know that's what's going to get people's attention. So I can't speak on why he brought that up exactly, but it was brought up, okay? And clearly, there is an issue with colorism within the music or industry among probably not just women, among everybody, but more specifically among women who rap. So I think that's something that we definitely should look at and understand. So the one thing that I've noticed is that men and women have different perspectives on colorism. I noticed that men tend to, and I'm not saying all men, but according to the comments and what I see just all over social media, when the topic of colorism is brought up, men tend to, not really address it directly or think that it is, as strong or prevalent within the Black community as it is. And so I just noticed that from the comments. I noticed that because, when you go to YouTube, you really don't see men talking about colorism or addressing it. And when I say men, I mean like on a large scale, right? I'm not talking about 1 or 2 people or a handful, 10 people that you may be able to name, or they did one, they made one comment or one, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about where a channel is dedicated towards colorism. You do not see it. And that's not a problem. I mean, men, again, I'm going to break it down why I believe there's a difference between how men see colorism and women from what I see, okay? From what I see. I'm saying that, there is a divide there, and there's a difference in how men tend to see colorism. Now, what I see and have took note of is that, with colorism, particularly the whole light skin, dark skin thing, I noticed that men can joke, a little bit more smoothly about light skin, dark skin. For example, you see it all the time where, men are, oh, that must be a light skinned dude, thing or whatever. Like, you see the jokes all the time. And it's funny, people laugh and move on, right? But I notice when a light skin, dark skin joke is done between women, it can be nasty. It could turn extremely nasty. It comes off as very negative. I believe, and this is just my own thoughts, I believe that men can kind of make it more smoothly and joke about it a little bit smoothly is because, to be dark skinned, like a dark skinned man, being dark skinned is directly correlated with their masculinity. So, for example, if you notice when men joke about light skin, dark skin, and they make the light skin, dark skin jokes, a lot of times it has to do with like masculinity, it must be a light skinned dude thing or whatever. Basically meaning, the light skinned dudes are not as hard or rough and tough or whatever. Usually when you see the jokes, it's used in that way. And again, people hear it, people laugh or whatever. And so for me, that tells me that, to be, when the colorist jokes are made among men, particularly black men, where you have a light skin, dark skin man. We've seen the jokes that, people have made, about Steph Curry, and it's funny. Oh, it's so funny or whatever. Or pretty boys. A lot of times, they make these jokes. Oh, pretty boys. He didn't want to get his hands dirty or whatever. Like we've all seen that. And a lot of times it has to do with their masculinity. Like, you're rough, tough, kind of hard if you're seen as hard if you're a dark-skinned dude. And it's actually been addressed by men. It's actually been addressed on, I believe, Sports Center one time where you had, who was it? It was, I don't know if it was Shannon Sharp or somebody talking about how, within the game of football, how dark-skinned guys who, are running the football are seen as more scarier because they're darker, and whatever. But I remember that particular topic being addressed. And again, that reminded me of how, being dark-skinned among men is, directly related to their masculinity. Obviously, men, a good majority of black men, they want to be seen and perceived as being, masculine, men, and that's a good thing and that's okay. But again, I'm just pointing out the difference between, when colorism is going on, whether it be in a joking manner and, it can kind of come off as a smooth joke, it's still colorism. You're still making a distinction between being dark-skinned and light-skinned. So I just want to point that out. And again, when this, certain jokes like that, it cannot be done among women. This is why you don't see light-skinned, dark-skinned women making these light-skinned, dark-skinned jokes, because they would get dragged. It would be a full-on, I can't believe this person said that type of thing. So I noticed that particular divide. And I noticed how, again, men tend to embrace it a little bit more when it's, again, in a more positive way, when it's joking and it kind of doesn't go as far. And so, all right, so this brings me to my last little thing. I'm going to go ahead and play the Nicki Minaj interview, and then I'll come back with more of my thoughts.
Finding a great balance. I feel like it took me a minute to find the balance of being me and giving the people what they're hearing now, but I feel like now I'm finding a balance.
You feel like you raised the bar for maybe Like, I think brown skin rapper chicks, no disrespect, but I think since you came in the game, it kind of made it hard for them.
Really?
Yeah, I think brown skin chicks got to work a little harder. I think it's like you set a bar for like brown skin chicks to be like, because a lot of chicks at that time was like, oh wow, well, Nicki popping right now, I gotta be at least trying to catch up to look like her somewhat. And a lot of brown skin chicks really, like, I think brown skin chicks got to work extra harder.
Well, I will say dark skin and brown skin women have to work extra harder in any field.
Yeah.
Just like how I feel being black, a black woman, I feel like, if a white woman and me was going into the same job at Wall Street, I feel like I wouldn't get the job off the rip just because of me being black, unless I was double and triple times smarter than her and double and triple times better than her. So yes, I do agree with that. But of course it's me, so I don't feel like my complexion is the reason why I made it. But I also I try not to be blind or play dumb to what's really happening in the world.
I think you came in the game at a time where complexion played a part in a lot of stuff.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. Like, even the videos are like, everybody was going with like the lighter girl.
Oh, yes, you're absolutely right. But I feel like now it's changing. I feel like a lot of people now are making it their business to be like, melanin, and that whole trend is very much happening right now, which I love.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going back to that. Everybody getting back to their essence. Everybody starting to claim like, people wasn't even claiming their nationality like back in the day. Remember, you ask somebody if they hate you, they'd be like, "Nah, I'm Jamaican."
Absolutely.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so when BigFindi brought up the topic, I just want you guys to, take note that when he brought it up as in, he put, all dark skinned and brown skinned women in one big pot. He said, brown skinned women X, Y, and Z. And then when Nicki responded, she responded with, she made the actual distinction between brown skin and dark skinned women. So, again, there's a conscious, understanding of colorism and how colorism is very prevalent. And I think just, them addressing it in that way and responding in that way, says a lot. There was also something that was brought to my attention when he talked about, when Nicki responded and she was like, oh, dark skin is, people are, she said something to the effect of, the black community are becoming more and more, loving their melanin and the skin they're in. And she kind of addressed that whole, that whole thing. And she called it a trend. Now, for me, and some of you guys may say, oh, well, it's not that deep. No, it actually is. Because, black people in general, whether you're brown skin or dark skin, but more specifically within the colorist context and, people who address colorism, loving your brown skin and being, okay in your brown skin and dark skin is not a trend. And it shouldn't be seen as a trend. It should be, this is how things are going to be. It's not a trend because you guys know trends come and go. So I don't think she really, took it that deep when she made that comment about it being a trend. I don't think it's a trend. I would hope it's not a trend. I would hope that, black people kind of getting back. Because you remember this whole thing, like in the 60s and 70s, not that I was born in that era, but when you go back and you look at the movies and the videos, you see, the afro was a symbolism for not just loving your hair, loving, your heritage. Also, it was also a symbol of, I am rebelling against what y'all say is a beauty standard because I'm wearing my hair in a way that, other groups of people in other races can't wear their hair. Or particularly at that time, they wouldn't wear their hair that way. A good majority of them, when you had an afro, afros were more, coined to the black community. And it was a sign of strength and being strong and black power and black empowerment. So, and it went in, it was in then. And then as you guys can see over time, it kind of went in, and it was a trend back then. But I would hope that, being black, being empowered, loving our melanin, particularly those who are heavily melanated, loving just just everything in the essence about, being, whatever skin color you are, being in your own element and loving that about yourself. I hope that's not a trend, but that's all I have for you guys. I love you guys. If you guys want to see the entire video, go ahead and look at my comment section. I posted the link to watch the entire interview that Nicki Minaj did. Please don't forget to like, comment, let me know what you guys think, and subscribe, of course, because I would like to grow my channel and I want to keep this going. I love you guys. I hope you guys have an amazing day and or night, depending on where you are. And until next time, peace.